Hello everyone and welcome to the Knowledge Pool, your source for everything regarding the rules of Magic the Gathering. And today we'll be covering one of the most infamous cards in all of Magic the Gathering history, Urza Saga. One of the cards that have pegged many formats like Modern, Legacy and even Commander. Let's see what's up with it. So let's start with breaking down the card. Urza Saga is an enchantment land saga. Urza's is also a subtype. One thing to note here, Saga is an enchantment subtype and Urza's is a land subtype because of the Urzatron lands, namely Tower, Power Plant and Mine. So what that means is that it's subject both to the rules regarding lands and sagas. I've already covered the rules regarding sagas in a previous video, so please check it out if you want the full description of it. But what we need to take note here is that this saga has 3 chapters, and what's unique about it is that the saga's chapters are still triggered abilities, but they actually, the first 2 at least, give an ability to this card, which is going to play a very crucial role on some tricky interactions we'll cover later down the line. So let's see the card. The first part is that this card gains the ability to add for a colorless mana. It can be responded to, and after that it gives the land an ability which is a mana ability. The second ability is another triggered ability that gives this land activate ability, which is to make a construct. And the third ability is that we get to tutor for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1 and put it on the battlefield, and then we get to shuffle. Of note here, the mana cost of the artifact has to be exactly 0 or 1, so we can not get an artifact land with it even though it has a mana value of 0 since it looks for mana cost specifically, and we cannot get a card who has an X in its mana cost. Also, something that's very important here, we also covered in the Saga rules video, is that when the ability resolves, you first get the artifact into play and then the lands. Getting into the rules breakdown of the card. First things first, this card is an enchantment land, so being a land, it means it's subject to the land rules, so we can only play land per turn or on our main phase when the stack is empty, unless an effect allows us multiple land drops. And also, the Urza subtype on the land doesn't interact at all with the other Urzatron lands. Even though it's an Urza land, it's more for a flavor reason. And the fact that it's a saga, which makes this card interesting, because the triggered abilities actually don't do anything visible on the board. What they do is that they make the land gain abilities, at least the first 2 of them. So, the first one ability is that it gains a mana ability to tap for a colorless. That's tap because usually lands always tap for mana nowadays. We don't have any tabernacles or anything printed in the last few years. The second ability gives the land an activate ability that allows to make a creature token. And here is the first tricky part. So the fact that it gains this ability, it means that we can essentially, without cheating, use it twice. So we can use it the turn it gets it by tapping 2 other lands for mana and making a constant, and we can also use it in response to the third ability or on our upkeep before the third ability, because the land will still have that ability. The third ability is the bread and butter of the card. You get to search for an artifact card with a mana cost of exactly 0 or 1. So you could get a Black Lotus, Sol Ring, a mana vault, a mana creep, but you cannot get a card with X or an artifact land or anything other that does have the specific mana cost in its text. Also, the fact that the card gains this ability allows us to do some tricky things which we'll cover on the interactions with this card. Keep in mind though, this card is also a saga, which means that if somehow loses its abilities, let's say by Blood Moon, you have chapter 0 as the final chapter, and it will go to the graveyard where state-based actions are checked. And with that, let's take a look at some tricky interactions through the saga. First interaction is the Blood Saga. So it's the most common interactions you can come when playing this card. If there is a Blood Moon on the board, because it changes the saga into a mountain, that means it loses all abilities and has the ability to just tap for red mana. But that won't do you any good, because when a saga loses all abilities, the final chapter is considered to be chapter 0. That means that 0 counters on it causes it to be sacrificed. If it has even more than 0 counters in it, so we usually have 1 or 2 counters, the saga will have reached its maximum number of chapters, and so it will be sacrificed due to state-based actions and go to the graveyard. Here is a neat trick you can do to essentially have infinite abilities of Urza Saga on your side. So, Tension Stage is a land that has an ability to copy a land and then keep the ability to be able to copy another land again. What we can do here is we can copy Urza Saga using a Thespian Stage. Now keep in mind that this will allow the Thespian Stage to also have the ability to make itself into another land. Because it's now a saga, it gets the lore counters as normal, so when the first turn passes, it gets the first lore counter, gains the ability to add the mana, then the second, it gains the ability to make constructs. Now, what can we do here to bypass the saga sacrifice thing? Is we can, with the third ability on the stack, make our Thespian Stage a copy of another land, and in that way, we get to actually both get the trigger from the saga, because it has already triggered, and then, because the Thespian Stage wouldn't be any longer a saga, we get to keep the Thespian Stage. But, because the first 2 chapters of Urza Saga allow Thespian Stage to gain those abilities, they are applied on layer 6, where the clone effect from Thespian Stage applies in layer 1. So, what you can do here is say, in response to the third chapter ability, copy a basic forest, and now you have a basic forest with the abilities of being another land with 2 mana, adding a colorless, and making a construct. That's really neat because this is a way where you can dodge the Blood Moon effect, because the basic forest, even though it has the ability, is still a basic land. And the final interaction is called Parasitic Tutoring. What we need here is the Urza Saga and the Hex Parasite, or clock spinning could work too. So, as covered in the Rules Saga video, which you can check in the description below, when a third ability of a saga triggers, the saga doesn't actually go to the graveyard before it resolves. So we can kind of hack that by using a card that removes counters. And what happens here is we put the third counter into the saga, trigger the ability to search for an artifact. Then, while that ability is on the stack, we can activate Hex Parasite or Clock Spinning to remove that counter. What happens here is that when the ability resolves, the game checks and sees that Urza Saga no longer has reached the max number of counters. It now has 2 and has a total of 3 chapters. That means that we can keep doing this every turn by removing the counter and keep tutoring. And that's some of the most basic things you need to know about Urza Saga, one of the most polarizing cards in the recent years. Please let me know any questions you might have or interactions you might have missed. Thank you all very much for watching. See you in the next video.